Hello, everybody. Great to see that you made it fighting the crowds. My name is Gil Press, and I'm a contributor to Forbes.com. Last December, I decided to post a collection of AI predictions for 2019, then I realized that I can ask my own AI, the Amazon Smart speaker that I have at home. And so I said to her, to my dear Alexa, I said, Alexa, give me a prediction for 2019. And she immediately responded saying, do you want me to open Today in History? So I know that the state of the AI in 2019 is such that it can be summed up in one phrase, try and try again. So I said, Alexa, tell me what will happen in 2019. And Alexa answered. Alexa answered, I can't tell. The crystal ball is cloudy. Not bad, huh, for the second time. So we have with us here a great collection of great examples of human intelligence, and they come from all corners of the world. I'm sure they have perfectly clear crystal balls based on their extensive and very impressive work experience in startups and large companies in a variety of industries, from banking and financial services to telecommunication and IT services, all the way to healthcare and education. To my left is Lior Moses-Voronov. She used to work with IBM Watson, but now she manages a team of, I'm sure, very smart people focusing on machine learning, deep learning, NLP, classification, and text analytics, all as a director of AI and cognitive at KPMG Israel. Next, we have Yori Nelken, a serial entrepreneur and a general partner in Cognitive Venture, which is investing in disruptive AI solutions. At the end of the row, we have Bill Gaida, a Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnership and Innovation at Visa. Visa's current tagline, if you don't know, is everywhere you want to be, and indeed, Bill tells me that he just moved to Barcelona, but his home office is still in London. To my right is Seth Haberman, also a serial entrepreneur and CEO of Sense Education, the world's first artificial intelligence solution for providing personalized feedback in student submissions, and I'm sure we'll hear more about it later. And we have also Ideshini Naidu, Senior Vice President of Engineering at Wave. Wave is a Canadian startup founded 10 years ago, which develops and sells financial services and software to more than 3.5 million small businesses around the world. And last but not least, we have Eyal Gura, a serial entrepreneur. It's your fifth company now, I believe, and he is the CEO of Zebra Medical, an Israeli medical imaging startup that uses machine and deep learning to build tools for radiologists. John Medved this morning said that AI is the most important trend in tech investment today. And indeed, just in the US, the money raised by AI-related companies increased 72% from 2017 to 2019. reaching $9.3 billion. And it's not just investor interest, right, or entrepreneurial interest. So far, I believe almost 20 countries announced their own national AI strategy. So with a lot of interest comes a lot of hype. And I thought that in the first question, to start the discussion, we will really try to bring to you what the panel members know about very specific applications, the AI application that work today in the real world. Lior, you want to start?
Hi, everyone. Just to set everything straight, we're at KPMG developed an R&D center about 3 years ago. So we help customers and organizations from all sectors, not only in the consultative side of things, but we actually built the solution end-to-end, from designing and taking a business problem into what type of technological solution could be a part of to help them, actually. So after doing that, I'd like to say that we see different technology, different implication of AI for each one of the sectors. One of the things that I think could be most interesting for people to hear about practical use cases around healthcare is one thing that we're doing right now to work on digital hospital, where we take information that is unstructured information, such as hospitalization summaries, and using natural language processing and machine learning technology, we take that and we help to continue the treatment for patients all over. If I'll take a look on the banking industry, there's a lot of things happening there to support client journey. So from the understanding of what does a client want, what type of, what should be my next offer for the client, for it to be custom to where they are, and to support that journey to continue. How do I take different complex technologies such as chatbots and internal processes and connect them all together to one journey that continues throughout the different, let's call it, digital application. We do see the awakening also around Industry 4.0, using predictive maintenance and insights model to understand what drives demand. It could be if I'm producing different type of fertilization product, or if I'm doing retail. Some of the influencers that I have about my demand do not sit within my organization. So we're taking information, internal and external information, to try to find those drivers that helps to change my model, to predict better, and to take action from even before things happening.
Seth, do you want to take the same question? And if you can just be very specific about, describe an application.
A long time ago, I used to be a video game programmer. And one of the interests that I see is that characters in video games are often driven by AI. So if you're thinking about a shoot 'em up, it used to be that they were very dumb. Now they're very smart. And not only are they smart, they actually learn about how you predict. So if you play a sports game...
And they shoot back.
They shoot back, and luckily that there's no damage. But it's been a very interesting place that it used to depend on having lots of people to make games exciting, but now you can have artificial actors who are very realistic and behave and start to adapt in the way we play games, and so they've gotten to be very sophisticated.
Great. Indashini, do you want to?
The company that I work for is Wave Financial, and we're a fintech, so I see lots of very valid practical application of AI on a regular basis. In our company specifically, we've got 3 very distinct focus areas. The first is using AI to automate tasks And the main purpose of that is making sure that we can give a busy entrepreneur back their most precious commodity, time. And the second focus area is using it to create solutions that have been deeply personalized to our customers. And what these AI engines allow us to do is use the business owner's behavior, use the customer's behavior in order to model solutions that are specific to them, like what their repayment rate or process should be if we give them a loan or if we give them an advance. And our third focus area is on what we call cognitive amplification, using the software to help people to act as their memory, to act as a guide or a teacher, or to be able to provide the right insights at the right time so that they can take better decisions. Like being able to show a customer when is the most appropriate time to send an invoice reminder to your customer. That increases the likelihood that that invoice reminder will appear at the top of their inbox and they will respond to it. Or being able to say which groups of customers should you give early payment discounts to versus customers that you should provide a discount on the next purchase to. So a lot of very practical applications.
Yeah, that's terrific. In banking specifically, consumers seeing more and more AI, not just responding as in a call center and so on, but also helping them save more money, do more things with the money and so on, giving advice even. Eyal, you want to talk about healthcare?
And so the amount of AI applications in healthcare is literally overwhelming. You have the easy part of learning how to use structured data, text, claims data, prescription data, and you can save many lives just by doing that. But then you get to the more interesting part around the computer vision, how you teach computers to actually see like we see. And you pretty much know already that Facebook don't need our help anymore to tag our friend faces. Why? Because we tagged for them for many years, and now AI learn how to identify our friends better than us. So think about all the pictures and images that physicians and nurses are using every day to make life-threatening or life-saving decision around digital pathology, dermatology, dentistry, ophthalmology, and the bigger part of what's called radiology. So all those hundreds of scans that are MRIs, CT scans, X-rays, and all those tiny points within them that can be lung cancer, that can be breast cancer, that can indicate that a certain case is acute, that you need to prioritize it because there is a brain bleed that is getting bigger. And so AI can and will do all those things, and it's very exciting to see it.
It's certainly exciting when you save lives, right? Bill, part of the hype about AI is that it's considered to be so new, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, about the recent breakthrough and so on, but machine learning, for example, has been around for a long, long time, and credit card companies certainly has used it to detect fraud for many, many years, right? So what is Visa doing today that's kind of interesting and new?
Yeah, so when I look at it, and some of the use cases have been mentioned, whether it's augmented retail, we can talk about that, or automated customer service, or authentication and ID, but where it's actually most mature is in the area of cybersecurity and fraud prevention. For years we had kind of rules-based engine, and every time we encountered a new behavior, we'd have to kind of update the rules. And several years ago, Visa and other networks have moved to first machine learning, where we could take a bunch of disparate data sources and seemingly unrelated events and start to change those rules engines based on machine learning to provide much more adaptive models. And now we've seen that evolve to where we're really now looking at whether it's device behavior or in some cases human behavior to develop predictive models, and maybe even from disparate industries, looking at something that happens in the automotive industry that can predict an attack on the Visa network or fraud. And so I think we've kind of moved from a rules-based, very manual process to machine learning, and almost through machine learning, and where we're heading now is more predictive analytics based on being able to consume virtually unlimited amounts of data from very unrelated industries. And so I think that's where we're headed now.
Yeah, from descriptive to predictive, that's really common to many AI applications, actually. Yori, anything to add to discussion on that?
Yeah, I think one of the implications of your question earlier is whether AI is useful.
Yeah.
And just to liven up the conversation, I think it's not. And here's why. And of course, I'm an investor in AI companies. But
So,
many
but you
moons
like
ago,
to invest in not useful things, right? Yeah.
it's really the question of the definition of what is
Yes.
AI.
course.
Because many moons ago, in the late 80s, I studied artificial intelligence here in Jerusalem at the Hebrew U with Professor Jeff Rosenshine. And I remember in the first lecture, he defined AI, and he said, anything we try to do today where humans are still doing better than computers, and we try to do with computers, that's AI technology. And back in the days, it was like will computers ever play well enough chess to beat humans? Mm-hmm. And that was the question. He said, as soon, something really important, he said, as soon as computers do it better than humans, it's just technology. So when you talk to your Alexa or I talk to my Siri, it's just a piece of technology. Technology can be very useful, but I love that type of asymptotic horizon type definition of AI. AI is where we're heading to. We'll probably never get there because as soon as we get closer, the horizon is farther away. Saying that, the devil is in the details, God in the details, wherever you are on that division line, that's a definition of big data for me, of machine learning. And there is a lot of useful stuff you can do with machine learning. Eyal's company, Zebra, can look at a medical imaging file and identify a pathology missed by a radiologist. Maybe, that's one great space has a lot of data and a lot of details, and that's why AI-like technologies are useful. Another area is just the largest industry of all, that's agriculture. We've invested in a company called Centaur that can tell you about a week ahead of time whether like 1,000 metric ton of wheat in a silo is going to spoil or not, and then prescribe what to do about it. So I think that the big AI revolution hinges on the fact that this time around, it's disrupting the largest markets of all, disrupting medical, disrupting agriculture, automotive, and everything, where previous quote-unquote industrial revolution, including the invention of the internet. I lived in San Francisco in the 90s. It disrupted relatively, it's surprising, but it disrupted relatively narrow markets. It created some like social media, etc. But as real disruption, it didn't touch agriculture, it didn't touch medical back then.
Yeah, agriculture is really fascinating because it's such an ancient profession that activity that's only really was revolutionized about 150 years ago, and now we see a kind of a second revolution in an area that's extremely important. We like to eat, right? So, and there's a lot of hungry people in the world that can be fed better with improved agriculture.
Absolutely, and
There's
about
a
it.
famous quote by Robert Solow, the economist, about computerization and information technology. And he's a macroeconomist, and he said, we know computers have affected productivity, we just can't find any measure of it. And it's actually, it's a really interesting point when you think about AI and scaling things, because the changes from fundamental things like electrification and plumbing and antibiotics from an economic level were so much more profound than almost anything that we've seen from the technological level. And I mean, that's why the greatest period of growth in the world it happened in the United States from about 1870 to 1970. It's the greatest period of growth ever. And those weren't deep technological solutions. Those were things like running water, indoor plumbing, electricity, combustion engines, airplanes, and ships. Those fundamentally shaped the economy at a very large scale. And one of the questions I have is, do you think anything in AI has that type of scale? Like that type of impact economically the way a combustion engine did, which made movement of goods possible that never existed before. That's really the sort of, when you say AI changes everything, is it going to do it on that scale?
Yeah, and you hear a lot of people, including people in the AI field, saying that AI is the new electricity. I'm not sure, but that's the
Isn't that
field.
what we're trying to figure out?
Well, maybe.
There is also much to do with the adoption of AI by us human beings. So me and Yori are on the board of a company called Taranis, also in the agriculture field, and they do something very similar to what Zebra does in medical imaging, but they do it for leaves. So they detect diseases on leaves. So they can alert the agronomist and the owner of the very large farms about certain diseases that are spreading in their farm, and by doing so, increase the yield and provide more food. And lifts don't care about who is watching them, whether it's AI or human beings, and
Right.
and the agronomes can check even 1% of the space. But when you speak with doctors or specifically with radiologists, they do care if you bring them a tool that they are sometimes afraid of, and they will adopt it differently than the way that Uber or other companies will adopt the AI replacement of the truck driver.
Yeah, so I saw you yesterday at a local hospital communing with the radiologists who were very happy about the tool that you're bringing them, helping them, even though some people would say, well, and some people actually say, oh, AI in 20 years will replace all radiologists, but apparently they don't think so. They think actually that this is an assistive technology, not a replacement technology. But if you can, tell us a little bit about resistance to the, right? Because anytime we introduce new technology, there's always resistance. There's always been resistance. Have you at all seen it?
So what you saw yesterday is a relatively new thing. When we started 5 years ago, it was like walking alone in the desert.
Yes.
And radiologists didn't even want to speak with us. It was a very strange situation for a startup that is seeking for feedback. In the last couple of years, because of the advancements of AI and the thousands of publications, academic publications that showed everyone that it's doable and it's working and it can be accurate if deployed correctly, people started to believe that it's going to happen. And now there is a complete shift in mind. There is a famous new statement in all the radiology conference that AI will not replace radiologists, but radiologists that are using AI will replace radiologists that don't use AI. This is, and now everyone are interested in checking what it is and finding out how it can help them. The tool you saw yesterday was an interesting example of augmented AI. So no one is looking to replace the radiologists. We don't have enough radiologists on Earth to support us or the 2 billion people that are joining middle class or the 4 billion people that are currently live in places where there is no radiologist. So we do need all the radiologists, but we need more of their time and focus. So AI can help them to focus more on the important things and to reduce the load on the less important things. And the tool you saw yesterday was a good example of how the AI detects a very acute condition, such as a pneumothorax in chest x-rays or brain bleeds in head CTs. And instead of debating with the radiologist, the tool just reprioritizes the work list of the radiologist. So the acute case is now up on the list, and the radiologist can watch it first before less acute cases. And we learned yesterday how it can save lives.
Yeah.
Just in terms of resistance to AI, our experience has been that there's a very low tolerance for inaccuracy. And if I think of a seemingly simplistic case that we deal with, we automatically categorize a customer's transactions from a bank feed and put it into the right type of transaction type. So a transaction will come through, and it'll come through from a big box store like Amazon. And today, the Amazon transaction is for office supplies, and tomorrow, the Amazon transaction is for cost of sales. And the algorithm can't predict accurately enough between those two because there's not enough information. You have a customer going to their local coffee shop and classifying those transactions as personal. Suddenly, they meet someone at the very same coffee shop, and their transaction is now business. So the tolerance for accuracy dropping on those predictions is very low, even though it's akin to training an employee who's kind of new to the job. So what we find is we kind of get mixed reactions, mostly around the accuracy, but also around people saying, I like that you're trying to save me time, but I want it to be 100% accurate, otherwise turn it off.
Yeah. And if I'll add to that, to the intolerance of people, I think that we passed the time where we had to prove that AI can help in some ways, but now people are very impatient and they say, okay, are you saving me time? Are you doing anything better for me? And when we, for example, with tasks, automating tasks or alerting that you have to take a certain action at the right time for the person to save his time and not to revisit the same thing 3 times, that actually helps in building that trust with how AI can help us and better our lives.
Okay, we'll get to the trust in a
Yeah,
second.
I think it really is, and we've seen this in payments time and time again as we've introduced new technologies. It's about time and context. So there are still a lot of people that think that if you put your Visa card into your iPhone to enable Apple Pay, that it's less secure, than just having that piece of plastic. And the truth is that every evolution of technology for payments is more secure than the last, not just more convenient than the last. But it requires a bunch of time, to move from the pioneers to where this is broadly accepted. And I think that we're going to see the same thing in AI. There's going to be creepy components to AI around augmented retail. And the way that humans are going to kind of interface with augmented or retail, that Amazon Go experience where you walk in and walk out. We've actually seen retailers say, I want to put a bit of friction there because my customers said they want a bit of friction because they want to know that they've actually shopped as opposed to something else. So it's going to take time and context. And then the other thing I experienced yesterday, we met a company called Voca AI that's doing machine-based natural language customer service. And they actually demonstrated in these trials, and I was surprised by it, that the drop-off rate was lower with this natural language machine response than it was with a live operator. And I thought that would take, in many cases, much longer, and you'd see much higher drop-off rates when someone realized or actually told they were talking to a machine, and they actually found the opposite. So I think it's early, and a lot of it's going to be kind of context and education.
I would say that it really depends on the experience that you're giving the people, because if you're using a machine to mimic human capabilities in natural language conversation, you do not change their experience, but you better that with the machine.
Well, actually,
Talk about the hybrid machine-human interface and so on that you want to talk about.
yeah, I was just say, I wrote some of those rule systems, not for Visa, but for other banks, so I am that old of your old AI. What I think, the point Eyal made is a really important one about the sort of mix of how humans and AI work together. In education, the field that Sense is in, there's been a lot of work of people trying to sort of completely automate the assessment of somebody's work. Like how good is it? What grade should it be? This sort of idea that you put a stack of papers into a box and out comes everyone's grades and comments and things like that. And we actually don't believe AI is good enough to do that. And so with the people who founded Sense, the technology behind it, is what we're really good is finding common patterns in how people do work. Computers are very good about that. And once you have those common patterns, you can sort of measure how closely people's work resembles each other. You can cluster them, and then a human can write feedback. Because human feedback is much better, despite all the natural language, things like that. It's much more subtle, and it's much better, and it's much more intuitive. And so that's, to me, a sort of magical space where you can reduce a class of 5,000 people online to 12 people. And once you do that once you recognize all the ways people solve those problems, then you can automate it. But it's still the human, it's still the product of a human deciding what response should go and how am I going to write it and what are the emotional contents and things like that. And so I think this hybrid system is really in many cases, overcomes some of the parts that make AI difficult. There's a joke in New York about automated cars. And the joke is, as soon as someone in New York realizes that this is like a car driven by a robot, they'll just stand in front of it just to mess with it. And so how's an Uber gonna, because kids will realize that the car's not gonna run them over. So they're just gonna mess with it. Like, let's see, I'm gonna walk my dog in front of the car. What are you gonna, and if there's no one to get out, right, what are you gonna do? Like, you gotta call someone to say this kid's, and this is, people will find ways, and having that bridge always gives you, you say something nice about me now, right?
Yeah, it's a question to you about, I'm curious about the way you check the examination or text. You mentioned humans are more subtle. When I was a student, I did my own AI, and I realized that if I'm writing too long of a summaries, but very, very long, the professor will not read them, and he will give me an A grade. So I think.
But you know why?
So,
Because he had too much
so I did the same thing that the kid doing with the Uber car. I was just messing with it.
Right.
So I think AI can also provide consistency. So all, those of us that became professors or TAs, or we know that sometimes it's not a good day, sometimes you're tired, but there are students that.
But that's where a combination
Yeah.
system works fantastically.
Exactly.
I want to add one thing that, for example, in HR, when you need to write some kind of essay or a summary about a person and really grasp all their different types of the parts of his personality, if he will sit in front of 3 different psychologists, they will all come out with different outcomes.
Well, it's
Try radiologist.
Yeah, and so one of the things that we've done with one of the biggest HR companies here was to try to standardize it, and that actually derived a big discussion on what is right, because I don't think that even we as human beings are always on the same agreement and on the same page of what should we automate and how we should automate it. And I think that this really relates to what Seth said. We really need that diversity, and we need to have all the options and different outcomes on the table before we go and decide what to do with it.
And we have seen it with computer technology for many, many years, that when you try to automate something or just introduce computer technology into a previously not computerized area, that forces humans to sit down together and standardize and come up with rules and so on. But that also raises, the fear level, the anxiety that maybe this is really a way to standardize things so you can replace my work and so on. Yori, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think that AI can go deeper and deeper and simulate more of intelligence and actually surprise us to a large degree. Recently a painting made by an AI system was sold on Sotheby's for $433,000. And when you look at that painting...
This is a not useful investment. See? That's a good example.
Well, you put it on blue-
assume that the buyer was a human being.
That's right.
Good point.
We never found out.
But I can tell you one thing. I looked at this painting, and I'm an art collector, and I looked at this painting for 15 minutes, and it's good. It's really good. It's evoking emotions. It's evoking kind of an intellectual, like what is it exactly? It's actually a semi-portrait, etc. So I think AI is going very, very far, and is going to be as diversified as human beings are eventually. So we're going to have the same, conversations we're having now. We're going to have them again and again and again, except that the automation level is going to be more and more extensive. I still think that there will be different AI system evaluating people at the workplace differently, and probably both of them are okay, just different opinions.
So that leads really to the next question, and Lior, you wanted to talk about it. It's explainable AI, because there's a lot of complaints that when you evaluate people, you might introduce bias, you might introduce bias into the AI system and so on, but there is a solution, or maybe.
There is a problem.
There is a problem.
So people do not like black boxes, and when we put an AI system in the workplace, we get it to be there and to do its job, but then at the end of the day, and I think AI can really relate to it, if a tumor, if a doctor looks at an X-ray and he sees a tumor and he says, this is benign, but the AI system will say, no, this is malignant, without any explanation, doctors wouldn't have it. They would think, and they would say, he wasn't there when I did my thesis. He wasn't there when I learned how I operated something that looked the same. And also the other way around, if he says it's malignant, and the AI system will say it's benign, even further. And I think that we should look at it in 2 different parts of trust. So first, as you said, one side is trust, and the second part is AI in control. And that's where we take bias and we take that need for standardization. That's all, and how we make AI under control, that we can bring something that's sophisticated enough, but that could be explained, because when we look at models, and of course with deep learning, is much harder to explain than you would use a very simple model. And this is a debate that's going now with a lot of our clients, but what we do see that it's always on the table and is really important to them, that the AI system will have some kind of backup or explanation, and in the way that we would converse as people. Because if I would say something that you do not agree with, you would ask me, how did you get to that conclusion? Did you take into consideration 1, 2, 3, 4? And these things are not, our AI systems are right now operating as models or as an engine rather than a full process with all the explanations behind it.
So,
Yeah, I actually think humans are more black boxes than most AI systems. And it's actually a serious comment, because I think that explainable AI is very much overrated. I think it's a sign, in the Computer History Museum in Mountain View, they have a little calculator tied up with this, how you call it, the mechanical abacus together. That, for a period of time, somebody imagined that an abacus and a calculator, electronic calculator together are somehow useful, because maybe people don't trust the calculator, and they want to check that the calculation is right. I think humans do not explain the rationale most of the cases, and I think that unless the output of the system is required to be explained, part of the challenge is to explain, for example, figure out the root cause for something, then the explanation is actually the output you're looking for, then absolutely the system must be able to explain what it finds. But other than that, I think very soon people will just not care that much about the rationale. Just like they don't care, they call their cousin doctor and they ask, is it okay or not? And they say, I think it's fine, and they're good with that answer and move on with their lives.
yeah, I'm not sure about the not caring, because the AI is percolating so much into public discussions, and as I mentioned, 20 countries already announced, AI national strategies. It hasn't happened before with any type of computer technology.
Japan had an AI technology in the 1980s. It was a terrible failure.
Yeah, and so people hope again that it's not going to be a terrible failure. But Idishini, do you want to talk a little bit about the societal aspects of AI and how we make sure that the benefits of AI spread across society?
I'll get to that question in a moment. I just want to respond. I really do think that there's an important need to be able to explain AI. We're seeing so much public response to things where racial bias, for example, is built into sentencing models for the judicial systems, or being built into credit models when we determine how we're going to lend to people. And that's taking almost the ills of society and baking it in even further for the next generation of people. So I really do think that there is a responsibility on us as the technologists that are propagating this particular technology to make it explainable. Leo, you were talking about some of the technologies behind this. Things like models like layer-wise relevance propagation allows you to determine which set of input vectors actually contributed most significantly to the outcome of the neural network. But really, it is about taking that responsibility to say that in the design process of an AI model, we need to be understanding what types of scenarios need to be explained. Who are the counterparties that will require that explanation, and for what purposes? And take that into account in the design model and ensure that there's output coming out of that model at every stage, so that that algorithm can actually be explained. I believe that that's an important responsibility.
Especially with models that keep learning, this is something that definitely takes a big impact.
And if I go back to your question,
please.
Gil, about spreading the benefits of AI, this is something I'm particularly passionate about, being a South African working for a North American fintech, is about making sure that the benefits that we have from the developing world, we're able to take it into the emerging markets. And one of the opportunities we have is to take a leaf out of the book of the multinational corporations, the global corporates. And in the startup world, we often love to hate these guys. But we should be able to learn from any source. And if you look at multinational corporations going into countries, they are often required by law to provide their services in low profit or even non-profitable parts of the country in order to get access to the profitable portions of that country. Now, we as AI and startup companies, without the pressure of regulation, we should be taking that responsibility very seriously to make sure that the solutions we're building that are appropriate for the developing world can actually be tailored and made relevant for markets that are still emerging. And I'm not saying this because it's an altruistic belief that we should have and that we should go forward with, though it would be wonderful if that's also part of the story. But because this is a really important opportunity for us to tap into real diversity. Innovation that comes out of necessity and need that is different to what we are experiencing in the developing world. It will help us make all of those solutions better. But also because I believe that this is a sustainable approach to addressing one of the world's greatest problems, and that is that growing gap between the haves and the have-nots. And history has taught us repeatedly that when this gap grows, humanity as a whole suffers. So this is not something that we should undertake as an investment that we all need to make for the sake of charity, but so that we can all benefit from it.
Any comments on that, Bill?
Just quickly, I completely agree with the point that you made, but you know, when I look at some of the key technologies where we're seeing a lot of investment and a lot of advancement in AI, whether it's financial services and how many experiments or POCs I'm seeing around providing credit scores for the underbanked because there's no traditional way to do that, or how much of our AI efforts in medicine is around remote medicine and basically leapfrogging all the infrastructure requirements that we required for medicine, you know, prior to some of the AI and remote diagnostics we're doing. Certainly some of the agri-tech that we're seeing in AI, I don't know that we're getting the balance right, but from a high-level observation, it almost seems like the AI and some of the benefits of it and its ability to I guess it is leapfrog some of this the infrastructure-based technology we've had before, kind of leads towards pushing it farther and farther afield to a broader demographic than some of these other technologies, and I just hope that we get the balance right.
Good.
I was going to add one thing, which is a lot of AI, if you think about what Lior was talking about or things that Visa do, a lot of this is what I put in a category sort of reverse engineering the human response system. If I put something, I used to be in the ad tech world, if I put something up, what's somebody going to click on? What's the combination of sweet and salty that's going to be the most addictive? We spend an awful lot of time and money building things to get people to buy things, click on things, read things that they wouldn't necessarily want to do, but we're so good at building these AI systems that predict what people are going to click on or purchase or eat or things like that. And so I think there's going to be a field where we're sort of going to take all that sort of reverse engineering the human response system, but use it to protect people from these things. In other words, we're going to have smart navigators that are going to reduce clickbait. We sort of have dumb ones now, right? That remove all ads, but let's remove the ones, or things that sort of push us into ways to protect ourselves, because it's sort of like, you know, Kraft spends millions of dollars to make Doritos incredibly addictive. What do we have to protect ourselves? And it's that we have to sort of deploy the same type of technologies, you know, whether it's on our phones or things like that, to sort of protect ourselves from these people who are just trying to say, buy me, click me, read me, all of those different things.
Let's move on. Just one more quick questions about the future, capitalizing on your clear crystal balls, and then I'll open it up for the audience for questions. Quickly, just in a few words, what do you think could be the next breakthrough in AI in terms of the technology itself? You know, deep learning has been around for a long time, but really had its breakthrough in 2012, so that's almost 7 years. What's the next one?
I think causal inference systems. I think the deep learning always tops out in its ability to take some knowledge from one context and shift it to another context, because it doesn't have causal information. It doesn't have the underlying model. And I think causal inference is the thing that's going to make that the ability to sort of learn from one area and really apply it, but it means an understanding of cause and effect. And this is something that statisticians have grappled with. They hated the idea of causality. They kept it out of statistics for years, and a lot of statistics rolled into AI. And so the idea of bringing causality back as part of inference into AI systems will be the major change, and also allow things to really evolve into the next level.
Okay, great. Do we have any questions from the audience? Is the mic going around? I hope.
One guy right in the front.
Yeah. Can you shout? Shout.
So I don't need to shout. Well, we start to talking about the applications of AI, but if we make a step back, do you, from your point of view, do you see any sector that AI today or the next 5 years cannot be applied?
Well, clearly AI is applied in agriculture, a safe food supply for the world, for growing world population, where today about 30% of already produced food goes to waste. Eliminating that waste is a very significant trajectory of multiple AI-related activities. I do not believe that in the next 5 years, suddenly we will have like a revolution in the sense that, we'll be conversing with robots, not even knowing if it's human or not, I don't think that's coming anytime soon. But I think that in 5 years, in 7 years, when we look backwards, we'll say, wow, we've been doing some pretty significant, we've been putting to work some pretty significant technologies based on the ability to identify patterns, to understand root causes, to learn from the data and apply that knowledge in a prescriptive way to create a better world.
And back to what you already mentioned before about AI being just a technology, I think the biggest breakthroughs around AI will come in the next 5 years around actually regulatory breakthroughs. So once the regulators all over the world will start to take more brave decision, safe and brave decision around autonomous cars, around autonomous diagnostic tools, around things that can produce agriculture at better scale. And those will be the best breakthroughs we will see in the next 5 years around AI. So it will be the same AI, but will be deployed more at scale because of the regulators.
And I think that this has already started. We're starting to see a shift in the regulators' limits that they allow us to do with AI and technology.
Go ahead.
I'd like to know if any of you are aware of anybody who's working or those who are working on adapting AI in the field of education, especially elementary and high school education, which can adapt to the ability and the pattern of learning of each child, maximizing motivation and maximizing the amount of information the child learns while making it interesting, captivating the child, and minimizing frontal education to allow teachers to become educators rather than presenters of information to their blackboards.
So,
Seth, you have the last word.
okay, so there's a lot of things in that, and there's a lot of debate whether there really are different styles of learning. But certainly AI is already present in how different types of information is interactively presented to students. So you have systems where kids are, it's called adaptive learning, and where the system understands how much people know and changes the pace and the material based on that in order to not frustrate people or encourage people who, if you were the kid who was bored in class because you knew how to do long division, it lets you go ahead. And so the idea there is a simple one, which is it's not changing curricula, but it's changing the pace of curricula based on what people know and how quickly people learn. And that's certainly a big part of a lot of tools that already exist, and it has been probably for the last 6 or 7 years. I mean, big Pearson, Macmillan, all the big publishers have systems like that.
What systems are...
We'll talk after and I'll
Yes.
say this.
Personalized everything, personalized medicine, personalized education, that's really what we hope AI will help us with. Let's give a round of applause to this wonderful panel.